And Ramey, can you tell me the right way to pronounce your name?
Ramid.
Ramid. Okay, great. Thank you.
Sorry.
People usually like it when you say it right. So Ramid, have you been just at the Dubai campus, or have you been to other campuses?
No, actually only in Dubai, because I'm actually based in Dubai.
Oh, you're based in Dubai. Okay.
My business in Dubai, actually.
What do you do?
Actually, I'm doing in construction sector, especially in oil and gas and power sector.
Oh, interesting. We had a construction company that I do consulting for in Boston. It wasn't related to positive psychology or psychological capital, but it was actually to teach them how to sell, because it was the construction workers that actually usually will be talking to the customer, who's walking through the site, and they could say the right or the wrong thing, or be surly and not even, pay attention to them. So it was fun to train them on how to sell, because usually they're the ones that have to give the bad news that, oh, we're not going according to plan, we have to fix this and it's going to cost you more money. So that was fun to teach them.
Very interesting.
Yeah, you always want them to sign off on the on the changes.
Are you based now in Boston?
Cambridge, Massachusetts, yes, right next to Boston.
Yeah, okay. I've been in Boston actually 2019. I stayed there for 3 months.
Oh, what'd you think of it?
Yeah, that's why I know that actually the first time Halt International Business School when I've been there in Boston.
Oh, excellent. Did you enjoy your time in Boston?
Yes, yes. Actually,
Excellent.
I like this city actually too much.
Yeah, I like it because it's small. That's sort of my appeal to it, because I like a walkable city, and it's actually very tiny. There's only a little over 600,000 people in Boston. There's not that many.
Yeah. But too many universities and education institutes there.
Yes, I believe we have 66 universities in Boston.
Yeah, Boston and Cambridge as well.
Yeah, too much choice. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll just wait 1 more minute, and because I actually have a lot of content, so I want to make sure that we get through it all. I will actually be staying after our 1 hour scheduled time, so I can talk to people as well as go through more slides if there's interest. But I usually make more slides than we have time for, but I like to make people make sure they get it.
Perfect.
Okay, so everyone has the link, so people will probably be dropping in as we go through the program. So the people that we are starting on time, I want to be respectful of you. So let's just pop in. Psychological capital is going to have a few outcomes for you today. The first being increasing income for you yourself as the worker, helping you increase your performance, job satisfaction, creativity, and productivity. So typically managers really like psychological capital. And this is a landscape view of what engagement looks like in the United States. So if you're someone who is really engaged in work, that means that you're showing up early, you're working late, you really love it, you come up with wonderful ideas, and you're just really leaning in the whole time. So 29%, or about 1 out of 3 people, are engaged in the workplace. 52% are what we call not engaged, meaning they show up at 9 a.m., but not 8:59 a.m. They leave at 5 p.m., but not 5:01 p.m. They do what they're told, they do their job, they perhaps do it well, but they're not really connected. And so if someone gave them a better job offer, they're happy to pop off and accept that offer. The ones that we really want to be mindful of are the actively disengaged, which is almost 20%, about 1 out of 5. They're there in body, but they are what we call psychologically absent. Their heart and soul is not in the job. So they might be sitting in the seat, but they're probably surfing the internet, looking for another job. What we distinguish them from on active disengagement versus non-engagement is that they're unhappy. They might be hostile. They tend to engage in bad mouthing and gossip, and they tend to drag the rest of the organization down. When we do teach the positive work class executive ed course at Harvard University, we basically tell people the greatest regret in firing the actively disengaged is that you didn't do it earlier. So we're not shy about saying, these people are not only bad workers for you, but they're making a bad influence on others. What we're trying to do is look at psychological capital as a tool to bring more people into the engaged blue side of the boat. We find that you have a fair shot at doing that with the orange group, the not engaged, and the actively disengaged. Give it a shot, but don't spend too much time because they might actually be a lost cause. Granted, it might sound a little bit harsh, but we want you to have a good use of your own resources, and we want you to be successful with the time you spend on training with others. I did write a Harvard Business Review article called PERMA-V, which PERMA is an acronym for well-being on a personal level. And the article can show you how you can actually use it as a management tool. So the P stands for positive emotions, E stands for engagement, the R stands for relationship, M stands for meaning, A stands for accomplishment, and V stands for vitality or health. If you have all 6 of these at the workplace, you're going to have solid workers who are engaged. The spoiler alert on the article is when you read the longer definitions of all of these strategies, if you have your group brainstorm, how can we at our culture and organization and what we do technologically bring more positive emotions into the workplace? What could we do in our own individual organization to increase more engagement, better relationships? So in certain places, they might like to increase relationships to say, we're going to have a softball game. And that would be great for certain organizations. But let's say that we were looking at AARP, American Association of Retired Persons. They might not want to do something that's so physically intensive. Perhaps they would want to do something like a storytelling group or a moth competition where people are doing storytelling with each other, like a Toastmasters. So finding the pillars that fit into your culture can increase the engagement, but there is not a one-size-fits-all. This is what engagement looks like in the United States on the right-hand side. It's actually pretty good compared to the world. 40% are actively engaged, 47% you have not engaged, and 13% actively disengaged. You'll notice that some of these percentages are a little bit different than the boat that we saw previously. That's because the data keeps getting updated, and also you'll have different sources. So we're using Gallup, and these numbers are going to be having a drastic shift because of COVID as well. If you look globally, the numbers are pretty dismal. Only 15% of workers are actively engaged. 67% are not engaged. So these are your 9 to 5, they do the job, but they'll take a better job offer in a second. And 18% are actively disengaged. So you'll notice that active disengagement around the world and in the United States is pretty similar. It's in the teens. When we talk about flow is where you're so engaged in something that you lose track of time. It tends to be the intersection of doing something that is challenging and you can be successful at it. So if it's too easy, it's boring. If it's too hard, it's going to be frustrating. So flow is that perfect intersection. And globally, 85% of people are not in flow. And globally in the US, 60% are not. So again, most people look at these numbers and say they're pretty bad, which they are, but I see them as an opportunity that if you can move anyone into the actively engaged camp, you're going to be winning and you're going to be starting to see a lot better improvement at the workplace. And the reason that spending time to make employees engaged and keeping the currently engaged happy so that they stay engaged, take a look at some of these numbers. Engaged employees, 83% of them are going to be above the company average with performance. They also bring in 26% more revenue per employee. So not only are they more productive, but they're also more profitable. So they are worth the investment. If you take a look at this Gallup survey on work engagement, all the numbers are pretty good. You have less absenteeism, less employee turnover. If you're in manufacturing or construction, some of your safety incidents can be cut in half because people care, they're paying better attention. Less product defects, again, because people are paying attention and they care. You'll also notice whether it is service or manufacturing, you're going to have a little over 20% higher productivity and profitability. And just take a look at this slide on your own on why investing in well-being is actually a good practice from a monetary standpoint. If you take a look at the red arrows, which are the ones that I like to focus on, you're 6 times more likely to have employees feel engaged. So it's engagement that we're looking for. You're also going to have 125% less likely to burn out. Burnout's pretty bad. It takes a long time for people to notice that it's happening, but the people around them notice it several weeks, if not months beforehand. And then you're 1/3 less likely to quit. And people quitting organizations is really a problem right now. There was actually a very high level quit today from Apple. He was the director of artificial intelligence. He moved to Google because they said you have to come back to work, and he wanted to stay remote, and he left. So the industry was actually waiting for high level attrition, and it turns out that this is the first one. The biggest thing that some HR officials were saying was we were wondering why it took so long for this to happen. So people really like working at home, and an open letter to Apple this morning via the BBC basically said, let people figure out the best way that they work and let us bring that excellence to you in our own way. And so we will see what happens. Apple did actually stop temporarily the back to work mandate, citing a rise in COVID cases. So we'll see what happens with that. But when one of your biggest and brightest goes to Google from Apple, that may change policy. So today we're going to be talking about psychological capital to increase that engagement. And psychological capital, look at it as the car. And these 4 components, hope, self-efficacy, resilience, and optimism, are like the parts of the car. So on their own, hope, efficacy, resilience, and optimism work well. But when you have all 4 working in tandem together, they actually work better as a unit than individually as separate parts. So we could see these are great brakes and great wheels, but they work much better when you're using them in a car. So psychological capital is like the car, having all 4 components together. And when we take a look at, well, why should we care about this for competitive advantage? As far as how work has changed, when we first started, let's say go all the way back to when someone discovered the gold mine, that was your economic capital. It's what do you have? I have a gold mine. I have a diamond mine. Great. Then we moved to human capital. What do you know? Oh, I have a master's degree in engineering. I know how to engineer things. Excellent. Then we moved into social capital. Who do you know? Oh, well, my brother knows somebody else, and my sister-in-law can help us out. So those social capital relationships. Psychological capital is who you are. It's actually improving you at the core level. And the advantage is not only do you improve better at the workplace, but this improves your personal life as well, because all this information, all this research started for personal well-being, and now we're just simply moving it into corporate well-being with just a few minor adjustments. So to get into definitions, hope is not crossing your fingers and praying that things work out. It's what we call the will and the way to do something. The will means I'm motivated. The way is you actually have a legitimate, logical pathway to meet the goal. Self-efficacy is basically having the feeling of confidence that you can do something. And when you have that confidence, you put the effort in to hit the goal. So it starts with confidence and the belief that you can actually succeed. And there are 4 pathways to do that. Resilience is simply bouncing back after you've had some adversity. We've all had adversity. I'm going to be sharing with you 7 strategies that you can bring back to the workplace. And also, if you have questions during this presentation, just raise your hand midstream and I'll pause and answer your question. Optimism is basically predicting the future with a positive outlook, saying, I don't really know what tomorrow is going to hold, but I think it's going to work out. Am I going to get the job? Well, the interview went pretty well, and I think I'm going to get the job. You don't know, but it's basically called a positive assessment. And the beauty of this, which is why I've studied this so much, is that you can learn this and change. So these aren't things that you're born with. You could be, but if you weren't born with it, you can learn it. So today I'm going to teach you how we teach psychological capital to yourself and others. This work all comes from the University of Pennsylvania, where I studied during COVID to get a master's in applied positive psychology. Applied means I'm going on Zoom calls and teaching people how to do this and how to bring it back to work. Positive psychology is really the study of human well-being and flourishing. A lot of psychology has studied what's wrong with humans. Positive psychology is studying what's right with them. How is it right? And can we transfer that knowledge to others? So the first thing that PsyCap can do is that it can help increase creativity. So we're always hearing about innovation, innovation, innovation. Great. But if you look at a bureaucratic organization, it can be really hard to be creative when someone wags their finger at you and says, go be creative. And you have all these rules to follow in compliance. What we like to look at is Barbara Fredrickson's broaden and build theory, which basically says that if you are in a more positive mindset, literally, physically, your peripheral vision will expand. So that's broaden. And you'll start to look around and you start to make connections with things that you see. Hey, what if we put that together with that? What would that look like together? This is where you can get more creativity because you start to see more options. If you're in a negative mindset, you actually have less peripheral vision and you tend to look down and you're not going to get too many ideas staring at the floor. What they found is that using more positivity in the office, and I'll show you how you can get a quick pop on that, you can increase happiness and decrease depression. We do actually separate happiness and depression from each other. They're not necessarily on one continuum. So we measure happiness on one level, on one track, and depression on another. And if we take a look at some of the academic research surrounding positivity, this is one of the most famous studies done, and this is the father of positive psychology, Martin Seligman. They did an exercise which was basically sharing what are 3 good things that happened to you today. And they only did this experiment for a week. You wrote down what are 3 good things that happened to you today, and you did it for 7 days. And what they found in the black, these were people that actually did the work only for 1 week. And you find that happiness went up steadily over a 6-month period. And this was just over a 7-day intervention. Depression at the same time, again, measuring the opposite side, depression went down quite a bit. It went straight down for 3 months and then started to bump back up at 6 months, but it was significantly lower than when they started. My theory is that that 1-week intervention didn't last for 6 months, but people were encouraged by it and they kept up with it. That's just my theory. And again, if you do intervention expectations, such as starting meetings with, hey, let's go around the room and just share what are 3 good things that happened in the last week. These are some bumps that you can see in people's happiness. So these are what I would call small to medium-sized effects, going up 3% up to 9%. Now, be mindful that when someone's in a bad mood, that can be pretty contagious in the office. So anything that's positive is going to be a benefit to themselves and others. The big one is the drop in depression. So take a look at these numbers. You're looking at 20 to 37% drops. And these drops tend to last over time. So imagine if you institutionalized starting meetings with starting out with, hey, what are 3 good things that happened in the last day or the last week? So what I'm going to ask you to do is to pop into the chat or just raise your hand. I know that Julius is driving. So Julius, I'm not going to ask you to type into the chat, but would you be able to open up your mic and I'll just chat with you on the 3 good things exercise? And if anyone else would like to do this with me, there you go.
That's totally fine.
Okay.
Can you hear me properly? I'm sitting down at the restaurant right now, so I hope the connection is a bit better.
Great. So Julius, so what are 3 good things that happened to you in the last day? Big or small?
Well, big was I got my internship finally approved, which I've been waiting for quite some time now, and I know you are familiar with the hiccup that we went through there.
Yeah, Julius got an internship, so big applause there because I know about that. It was a big deal. So that's a big good thing. Congratulations.
It's a big thing,
Julius.
yes. And a smaller thing was, I think it has to do with, so my dad is currently in Switzerland, and he resides next to a very big chocolate manufacturer, and they do exceptionally well chocolate. And I had a piece of that in the morning just for good vibes, and it
Breakfast
helped me
chocolate,
quite
good
a
for
lot.
you. All right, and how about a third one? So we've got an internship, we've got some breakfast chocolate. What was a third one for you?
A third one was probably, I'm finally able to work out again, so getting some exercise going after my COVID illness. So that's probably the third one.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you, Julius. So the
You're welcome.
reason that this is working for everyone is that it pulls us out of negative habitual thought. It's just easier to complain than it is to talk about good things that are happening. Now, this is not happyology or tree hugging or just saying that everything's great when it's not. This is you yourself really picking out 3 good things that in your worldview went well in the last day, the last week. Some cultures may find that talking about 3 good things could be coming across as bragging. So you could switch this exercise to appreciation. What are 3 things you appreciate? Today, I really appreciated that the temperature was perfect when I walked my dog for 3 hours this morning. I appreciated running into a handful of friends and my dog played with their dog. So these aren't bragging, but these are things that are putting me into a more positive mindset, and they're true. So this can help shift a person into being more creative because you're popping them out of that negative complaining mindset or the rumination about what's bad or what needs help, what needs to be improved, what should I be worrying about today. So this is actually a cheap intervention, meaning that it doesn't cost anything. The next one is hope. And again, hope's not praying, but take a look at this. If you look at the definition of having the will or the motivation and the way, knowing how you're actually going to achieve that goal, there are different ways to do it. And what they have found is you actually increase more creativity because you feel that this goal can actually happen for you. So the HOPE research basically says that you create 3 ways to meet the goal. It's as simple as that. You know, it might sound too simple, but when you think about it, some people don't have a plan at all. They just say, I'm going to try to do this, and I don't really have a plan. If you do have a plan, usually people choose 1. But if you have 3 plans, a backup plan to your backup plan, when you're struck with adversity, you don't get upset. You don't call your friend and complain and try to have them cheer you up again. You just say, boom, okay, plan B. Okay, boom, plan C, plan D. And it allows you not only to achieve the goal faster, but you skip over a lot of these negative emotions of, oh, I'm getting some pushback. I'm not doing really well. Things aren't going my way. Now, this is the benefit of actually sitting down with your employees or yourself and making multiple pathways towards the same goal. And these numbers here are effect sizes on different things they were measuring. So to give you a sense, a small effect size or magnitude of impact is about a 0.2, medium is about a 0.5, large is huge. A large magnitude of 0.8 is quite big. And what they found was that when people actually went through HOPE theory exercises or said, before you start on a project, you have to show me 3 ways you're going to get there, based on supervisor ratings, not the actual worker, but the worker supervisor, they found that they had between a small and medium-sized increase in work performance. Same thing happened with objective performance. Objective performance is you need to make 5 widgets a day, and they actually made more widgets that day. Job satisfaction, which is self-report, meaning I'm going to tell you whether I'm satisfied, that popped up. Being committed to the organization, which means I'm less likely to quit, that went up. Health and well-being, that goes up as well, because when you are in a bad mood, your immune system can become suppressed and you can be open to getting sick. Burnout and stress actually dropped. So overall, what they found is that people who had more hope were more successful at the organization, and the effect size was greater than small, and a little bit less than medium. So right in between there. And remember, any incremental benefits we get are going to be net benefits. So any little bit helps. When 1,000 participants were studied, they found that the largest positive correlation to performance contribution-wise was because of hope theory. So now we're going to move into efficacy. This is the E in the HERO model. So HERO is hope, efficacy, resilience, and optimism. Albert Bandura is well known for this research, and it's simply your belief in your own ability to successfully accomplish a task. And in the research we're looking at a meta-analysis, which is a study of studies. So it's a conglomeration of 14 different studies. And what they found that employees that were high in self-efficacy created goals that were stretch goals, meaning that they were challenging to them, and they frequently achieved them. They also found that there was a positive correlation between overall self-efficacy and performance, which is sort of this positive snowball effect that, if Ramid, let's say, does something well, he succeeded at something, that's going to encourage him for his second goal, and he's going to get that positive snowball effect, what we call the upward spiral. And based on social cognitive theory, there's 4 ways for you to feel like you could succeed at something. And the interesting thing is that 3 of them are external. It's other people making you feel like you have the confidence. So it's performance accomplishments, vicarious experiences, verbal persuasion, and physiological states, which are pretty fancy words, but I'm going to break these down into super simple, which makes a lot of sense. So performance accomplishments is basically, I've done this well in the past. I already did it. If you want to run a mile, you could say, I've already run a mile before in my life. I know what running a mile is like. I can do it again because of my past. So Greg Hyman might say, hey, I know how to bike. I can go on a bike today because I've been doing it for years. So your past experiences encourage you that you can do the same thing in the future. Vicarious experiences is observing other people, where you would say, oh, well, look at her. She's skydiving. Normally, I'd be afraid to do that. I've never done it before, but well, look at her. I think if she could do it, then I could do it. So watching other people succeed can give you the confidence that you can actually do it too. The next one is verbal persuasion, which is someone encouraging you. So let's say, for example, Ramid has a construction worker and they're like, oh, I know you want me to do this job, boss, but I've never done it before. And Ramid could say, oh, I know you can do this. You're so talented with all the other things that you've done. You just have to add this little twist to it and you can totally do it. So Ramid could actually use verbal persuasion to get people to succeed at something that they've never done before. And then physiological feedback is your body telling you how you're feeling about things. So let's say someone says, hey, do you want to go sailing today? And you've never done it before. You could get this excited feeling in your body. Oh my God, this is going to be an adventure. It's a beautiful day out. It's summer. The boat looks pretty. I've heard sailing is a lot of fun. Excellent. I can do that. So you're getting physiological feedback from your body that says, hey, going on a boat ride is going to be a really interesting and fun thing to do. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to type into the chat now, and because we're going to be doing just a quick exercise, it's only 2 minutes long. So I'm going to ask you first just to pop into the chat, just 1 or 3 words on how you're feeling emotionally now. So I'll start off and I would say uplifted and excited, because I like teaching. So that lifts me up and I get excited to teach this content. So feel free just to put in 1 to 3 words about how you're feeling emotionally. They can just be, there we go, excited, optimistic, and determined. Excellent. So we'll have other people popping in as we go. And what I'm going to ask you to do for the next 2 minutes is to spend 2 minutes writing down about all of the successes and accomplishments you've had in your life. So what I'm going to do, just in the interest of time, is I'm going to shorten it to 60 seconds. So I'm going to do it along with you. And you're not going to be sharing these accomplishments. So don't worry about the bragging factor. All you have to do is just write down all the successes and accomplishments in your life that you've had for in your entire life. We're going to do it for 60 seconds, beginning now. And I'll touch base with you in 60 seconds. Okay, and stop. And now you're going to take 30 seconds and just review your accomplishments. Just take 30 seconds. Okay, pause. And now I'm going to ask Greg to open up his mic because he put into the chat, excited, optimistic, and determined before the exercise. So Greg, what are your emotions now after you've done this?
I mean, I would add accomplished to it. I definitely, looking through this list, it helps me reflect on everything that I have accomplished in my life, and, to make sure I'm not taking things for granted, that I'm not worrying about the little things.
Mm-hmm. How would you say your mood has changed, if at all, after the exercise versus before?
It's just been a good day overall for me, but I think it definitely helps put it more into perspective for me today, just that, what I was feeling is true, and it should be more of a long-lasting feeling.
Excellent. So you'll notice this is called a positive intervention, which is basically an exercise that you do to try to change your mood for whatever your purpose. So what we're trying to do is give you more self-efficacy, the feeling that you can do something. So when I looked at my list, I actually got, like Greg, I got a sense of accomplishment, but I also got this feeling of awe, like, wow, okay. When you put it on paper like that, that's kind of different. And so it could be really interesting that for a 2-minute exercise that literally doesn't cost any money, you can get your coworkers to feel like they can do more. And that's going to be a direct benefit to the organization. So these are some things that you can do as a manager to make people have more self-efficacy. First, be very descriptive about the task that needs to be performed. So instead of saying something like, that building needs to go up, I need you to get it to done, that's too ambiguous. If you say, I need a 50-story building, we're going to be using Margulies Peruzzi Architects, they're going to be your advisor, and you get really, really granular and specific about the task, you have a higher chance of them feeling like they can do it because you've given them a pathway. The next is, if they don't know how to do it, give them the technical training that they do need for it. Removing undesirable factors, such as workers that are actively disengaged. If you have an actively disengaged worker, super complainer, sitting next to your highest performer, it's going to drag them down. It drags down the highest performer. It doesn't necessarily drag up or convert the complainer. So make sure that those people have the environment that they need to stay engaged. Also, give people self-efficacy training. This works if they don't have high self-efficacy. There are surveys that you can give to people to find out where they are. If they're already high in self-efficacy, you're not going to get much improvement because they're already there. If they're low in self-efficacy, then the training would be worth the investment. So not everyone needs this training. You can also give people training in cognitive and behavioral strategies for complex tasks. So this might be for people that are new to an organization, new to the workplace. They might be younger, just don't have a lot of experience, and they would need this as skill building. And so you can certainly send them off to trainings for that. Your older, more senior management may not need this. In fact, they might do a good job of teaching it. You can also do self-efficacy programs that are going to be close to the task at hand. So if something important is going to happen in 2 weeks, time your program close to the event, as opposed to doing the training, let's say, a year out. Also give people really clear metrics on what success looks like. If they need to know what they're shooting for. So that has to be clear. So just saying something like, write me a good article isn't enough. We need I want a 500-word article that's going to get 100 likes when it hits social media. So something clear. You can also link personal consequences to the task, which could be positive or negative, such as what you do on this project is going to be how I review you for a raise. So just be mindful that this isn't busy work. I'm actually going to see, did you earn a raise based on what you're going to do on this project? So let people see how serious a certain task is. And then I added on number 9 on my own, which is verbal persuasion. Be encouraging. Tell people, hey, take on the challenge. A lot of managers usually only pop up, or some of them only pop up when something goes wrong, and they say nothing when things are going right. You could be a positive influence on your workers, as opposed to this authoritarian figure that people are afraid of and they withhold information from you. So be encouraging for people to take on those tasks. Next, we're going to move into resilience, and this is the ability to bounce back. And a lot of this work has been done in the United States with the Army and West Point. At West Point, what they found is that when you got resilience training, symptoms of depression can be reduced for up to a year. So these are actually these are big numbers. And this one was done over at West Point. And what they found was that graduates who did better, had more resilience, were because they had a greater purpose in life. They had a more positive view of the military, and they also had social support. So once they had that, and notice that the biggest one is greater purpose in life. We do have a podcast called Happy at Work, and we interview CEOs around the world. And when we interviewed the co-founder of Moderna, the big thing that got people to work 7 days a week and around the clock to come up with the vaccines was the company mission, the greater purpose in life, that literally we could help save the world and the people in it. So having that really strong link to the mission. Here are some protective factors for resilience. One is you could just be born with it. The other is being self-aware, just like being aware of what's happening. The next is self-regulation, which could be things like, this is super stressful, but I'm not going to have a cigarette and a drink. I want to, but I'm actually going to go to the gym instead, or maybe get out of the house and take a walk with a friend. Mental agility is the ability to reframe or look at this challenge in a different way. Perhaps, hey, it's this bad thing happening. Maybe it's opening the door for something better. Optimism, feeling that, yes, this is bad right now, but I think I'm going to come out the other end of this and be okay. Next is self-efficacy, which we just covered. Then there's connection, and this is social connection, having someone to talk to. And positive institutions would be things like your church or your workplace, if that's a good place for you, could be your soccer team. So any group that makes you feel uplifted. Southwick and Charney also did some work on resilience, and you'll see that there is going to be some overlap, but there's some new ones in here, like facing your fear, just saying, hey, I'm gonna dig in and dive in on this one. Next is moral compass, knowing what's right. What can really be helpful is people that do have a faith in a higher power. There's nothing specific about this one, but you think there's something bigger than yourself, and that can give you some support. Role models can be very helpful. I personally love number 7, physical training. So I like to do swimming and yoga. That's very helpful for me. Brain fitness. I know a lot of people like to do a Wordle, the Wordle app, where it's like a word game. They start that off in the morning. Humor, I laugh at things when they become overwhelming, and that can be helpful as well. And then the meaning and purpose, which we've already covered. There's actually a TED Talk that I did. You're welcome to pull this up with the QR code. And it's based on resilience. This is based on post-traumatic growth, which is growing and succeeding because you had a traumatic event. For example, let's say you're in a plane crash and you survive, and you get motivated to become an airline pilot because you don't want to have anyone else go through that experience before. Had you not had the plane crash, you would have never been inspired to become an airline pilot. We have reframed and rebranded post-traumatic growth to the word opportunity spotting, where in a negative set of circumstances, you look for the opportunities that that circumstance has provided to you. So that's a 15-minute video that you're welcome to take a peek at. For resilience, one of my favorite ones on the 7 steps to building resilience, or what are called the ABCs. So the ABC, the A stands for the adversity. Something happened. So let's say, for example, someone took my parking spot. I wanted this parking spot and someone else zipped in and grabbed it. Your belief about what happened, your interpretation will predict the consequence, meaning the next step. So let's say I have the adversity, someone took my parking spot, and my belief is they saw me and they stole it and they followed me around all day long just so that they could steal my parking spot. What would the consequence of that be? I might get out of my car and yell at them. I might block them in and be obnoxious. And those consequences, eventually some bad things are going to happen if I keep doing that kind of thing, being confrontational to strangers. But what if the same thing happened in, let's say, a hospital parking lot, in the patient visitor parking lot? So someone took my parking spot. What if I had the belief of, oh, it must be someone who's visiting a patient. They're probably just so overwhelmed with thought and worry. They didn't even see me. They just parked. Maybe they have an emergency and they have to run into the emergency room. So the consequence might be that I give them a well thought. Say, I hope things go well for you. And I go look for another parking spot. Same thing happened. Someone took my spot, but one ends up where I could get so hostile that maybe I get arrested because of my belief that they were stealing it from me. The other is that I could actually have a positive emotion that, wow, this is an opportunity to really wish someone well who's having a tough time, if I believe that they're here to visit a patient. So what I have found with resilience is if you change beliefs that no longer work for you, that can help you have better consequences. Step 2 is avoiding thinking traps. And this is where you get into these old lines of thinking. So for some people, the parking spot one might be a thinking trap. Some people have thinking, and that is actually a thinking trap. If you always say when someone takes your parking spot, it's because they were just out to get you that day, that would be a thinking trap. Icebergs are actually more deeply ingrained thinking traps. So for example, I actually have one. Which is, I believe that the police are just there to catch me doing something wrong. I've never seen the police as there to protect me or make me feel safe. I've never seen them as like safe harbor. I've always felt like, what did I do wrong? I mean, I'm an honest person, but that's just, I've always just been afraid of the police. And so that's an iceberg. Now that can be bad because what if something bad happens to me? I might not seek out professional help. I might just try to take care of it on my own. And maybe that's not going to work too well for me. So step 4 is challenging beliefs, that maybe wherever you picked up this belief, a lot of these beliefs were picked up in childhood, you say, hey, how much is this belief helping me? How much is the belief that people are following me around trying to steal my parking spot my whole life? Does that make sense? Is it logical? Probably not. So challenging beliefs can really be the beginning of where you start to realize this thinking may have helped me in the past, but it's not doing me any favors now. And this is where you can start to change your beliefs. Step 5 is putting things into perspective. A lot of times we can get scared and we can catastrophize things, and it can be helpful to stop with those what if scenarios and just go into what is really happening logically and not looking at every failure as some catastrophe going forward. Step 6 is calming and focusing exercises, which are really hard to do in reality when you're already upset. I find that these work better as preventive, like going to yoga every morning or taking a walk or doing something before a bad event happens. And then when the bad event happens, maybe you won't even call it bad. You'll just say it's like, swatting a little fly out of the way. Step 7, which is the last one and can be the biggest one, is what we call real-time resistance. This is catching yourself right in the middle of that thought process. So if you start to spiral down, you're having a lot of negative thinking, your brain is hijacking itself, you could stop and say, okay, let's stop this. We've been here before. I have a belief that's no longer serving me. How do I need to change this? So this is where real-time resilience comes in. And then we'll end up on optimism, which is basically you believing that the future is going to be pretty good when you don't know what it's going to hold. And there are 6 ways to look at what we call the optimistic explanatory style. So we have external versus internal causes. So let's say I go on a date didn't work out very well. I could say my date didn't go well because I didn't like them. Okay, or my date didn't go well because dinner was awful and service was bad and food wasn't any good. Those are external things. Look how different this one is. My date didn't go well because I'm a loser. I'm unlovable. That's internal causes. So internal is pessimistic, external is optimistic. Then there's temporary versus permanent. I failed the exam because I didn't study for it. Well, that was a one-timer. Yeah, you failed the exam, but it's because of a reason. If you study for the next exam, you can do well. So that's actually optimistic because it's temporary. If you say I failed the exam because I'm stupid, that's actually giving it a permanent reason. And that is going to be permeating into other areas of your life where we move into specific versus pervasive. For example, one time I was sailing, super windy. I brought the boat back early. It wasn't really working out. And I told the dockhand I didn't sail well because it was too windy. So I actually gave a specific reason, which was optimistic, but I didn't say I'm bad at everything. I don't know how to sail. I don't know how to write. I don't know how to teach. I didn't go into what we call kitchen sinking, throwing it all in there. So optimistic styles are external, temporary, and specific. Some predictors of that is one, having resilience training, having a sense of well-being, going to the gym, doing your physical health, also having good relationships and past successes where you can say, hey, I've done well in my life. I can figure this out. Some mediators of optimism, and this is where you can look for yourself. When something pops up and you don't know the future, do you expect the positive or the negative? Do you see events as opportunities when you're not sure how it's going to turn out, or do you see them as threats? Are you passive about things, or do you try to control things when you can and accept the things that you can't? Do you ruminate and over again and not get anywhere with bad thoughts, or do you just say, okay, let's just figure out some solutions here? Do you avoid things that you don't like, or do you take purposeful action? And when things go bad, do you isolate or do you reach out? So these are the mediators. And we can move into using optimism to predict and hire successful salespeople. So I see Greg is in the class, so he saw this about a week or two ago. And when MetLife went to Penn to figure out, can we hire successful salespeople, they found that optimists are more successful than pessimists. And typically it's the inner voice in their head that will be saying more positive things to themselves versus negative things, or they don't interpret it at all. So when they went to MetLife, they actually looked at people who had been hired. Their problem is that too many people were quitting after a year or two. And they found that the optimists, the top half of optimists versus the bottom half of pessimists, when they split the two, they found that the optimists sold almost 40% more. And this is an elastic number. So when they looked at just the top optimists, top 10% versus the bottom 10% pessimists, the difference between those two groups was the optimists sold 88% more. So hiring people for optimism is a really good idea. And this is what they did at MetLife. And when you look at predicting success, MetLife would hire people based on aptitude and motivation, which is basically, hey, are you smart? Can you do this? And do you want it? What they failed to ask was what you thought was going to hold into the future. So take a look at this blind spot. I'm a great athlete. I want to win the gold medal, but I think I'm going to lose. You really don't want to bet on that person. You want to bet on the person that says, I think I'm going to win. So what they did is they changed the hiring process during the interview to interview people for optimism. And what they found, they called this optimist group. What they found is that in year one, there was a 21% outperformance. And by year two, it was a 57%, which again, you're starting to get that positive snowball effect where my past success is encouraging me to have a future success. And so that is the end of our presentation. And we did have a handful of questions that came into the group. If you have a question or comment about the presentation, feel free to raise a hand. There was one question, and it was about psychological safety, which is the feeling of I can say something and I'm not going to get any retribution from it. I'm not going to get in trouble for saying, what was on my mind. And the question was, does psychological safety have anything to do with psychological capital? And there is a relationship. And from my perspective, what I would say is if someone is higher in psychological capital, meaning they have their hope, their efficacy, their resilience and optimism, they're going to feel more psychologically safe and more confident to speak up and speak their mind and say what they need to be saying at the time. So my feeling is that even if you work in an organization that does not have psychological safety, you could feel that you have more psychological safety because you do have psychological capital on your side. The other interesting thing is people with higher levels of psychological capital live longer, have better marriages, and make more money. So that's the conclusion of our time together. And I'm curious, Ramit, does any of this, would this work in different cultures? Because I know that you're saying that you're in Baghdad now and you've been with the Dubai campus. A lot of this research has been done on Western cultures, and there have been some modifications, specifically like with Asian cultures. Instead of doing 3 good things, we did 3 appreciation. And I'm curious if you feel that this would cross culture.
Yes, in terms of the culture, yes, I think workable the same in Western, and somehow, but not 100% should be applicable here, honestly, because even in GCC countries and Arab culture, actually different from country to country. Depends on the people and the mentality as well, and the education level of the people as well.
So if you would just go through the 2 exercises that I did in this program, the 3 good things, how do you feel it would work locally in your part of the world if we went around the room and said, what are 3 good things that happened last week, or what are 3 things that I appreciated? How do you think that would go over?
Yes, actually, if you think always and all time actually to be positive, yes, it will be workable for sure, and it will be actually giving very good results. This actually from my perspective and my experience in working with my team, as I have done actually for many years as a CEO in my company. So it gives them impression that we can work together and make a success together.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then the second exercise that we did, where we just wrote for a minute or 2 about all of our accomplishments in our life and reflecting on how do we feel right now, before that, and afterwards. Do you think that would fly in the Middle East, or would that need modification?
Yes, and it will be work, and with some touches actually we need to add to that one actually, let's say increasing awareness of the effective of this kind of process should be given, and train our people to that. Yes, I think it will be more positive.
Great, thank you. And what is popping in my mind is probably making the entire exercise anonymous, that people don't share how they're feeling emotionally before or after, because they might not feel safe sharing their emotions in a group of people that maybe they don't work that closely with. I'm also realizing that there isn't a benefit necessarily in sharing your emotions with the group. It's really just for you to notice that a 2-minute exercise can shift you. So I'm curious if you think that there would be more buy-in if the entire exercise was anonymous without sharing pre and post emotional feelings. Okay, Ramit, thank you very much. And Greg, so you're in North America. I'm curious how you feel these 2 exercises would work in your organization. And Greg, by the way, is in the sales sector. So Greg, what do you think?
I love it. I mean, I'm definitely going to utilize this not only with my team directly, but I'm gonna, push it up the organization. Whereas I'm gonna, I've always been told to push things up the ladder here internally. So I have my executive meeting in a couple of weeks. So I plan to utilize some of these exercises, especially because we've had some hard weeks where I know I've been tough on my internal teams that I work closely with, and making sure that I bring some of this to the table to make sure we're reflecting in the right way, that, even with the negative, there's still a lot of positive to look forward to. And, we've had a lot of focus shifted that way in the recent past. And, I look forward to bringing this to them to work through as another exercise.
Great. I will add one that I didn't share, which is basically, it's just a slight modification, is that when you start a Zoom meeting, people are always dribbling in. So what I would suggest or invite people to consider is that as someone pops in, so let's say, Greg comes in first, let's say, hey, Greg, what's one good thing that happened to you over the weekend? And Greg shares. Then Ramit comes in, let's say 2 minutes later, and then I say, hey, Ramit, what's one good thing? And as people are popping in, we instead of having this dead silence or just waiting for the 2 or 3 minutes for the meeting to start, we can increase that positivity a little bit and start the meeting off with a little bit more positive mood, which is going to help with the creativity and the innovative thinking. So I want to thank everyone for coming today. This has been recorded, so I'm going to be sending this over to administration for people to share this link with others. And thank you so much for coming today. I hope you have gotten a few things out of this that are going to be helpful, and I will see you for our next class. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
Thanks, Ramit.
Thank you, Michael.
Bye, Greg.